Welcome to the Kennedy Events Podcast, where we feature top marketing, communications, and future of work leaders and share their biggest takeaways and insights. We love these conversations and hope you will too. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Kennedy Events Podcast. I'm your host, Paige Buck. With me today is Maeve Naughton, the president and owner of MKN Consulting Group. Maeve has spent the last 25 years creating event sponsorship programs, prospectuses, and driving millions in revenue for large customer events, SKOs, and regional conferences. She's passionate about working with vendors and partners to create the best experience for them and their event attendees. In 2018, Maeve started MKN Consulting Group, where she provides partner marketing consulting to tech companies. Today's episode is also brought to you by Kennedy Events. We create stress-free conferences and events, providing expert management and design for all your corporate event needs, from in-person to hybrid and virtual. You can learn more about us at kennedyevents.com. So, welcome, Maeve. Glad you're here.
Hey, Paige. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, super excited to talk with you today because, as we were talking about before I hit record, you have a real niche in the broader events world. And I'm curious if you can give me a little definition of partner marketing and how you articulate it.
Absolutely. So partner marketing is, it can cover a wide gamut of marketing activities. But essentially what it is, working with partners of different types, alliance partners, referral partners, reseller partners, technology partners, any type of partner, and helping them with their marketing so that the vendor gets their messaging and their brand out to those end users through the partner or with the partner. So think of it like in-house marketing, but working with the partners to make sure that that messaging and the branding are sent out, as well as essentially driving all the revenue that hopefully comes from that. And like I said, webinars, newsletters, email campaigns, and your specialty events.
Yeah. So you really help somebody see like the whole landscape of opportunity for where their partners can be a source of revenue, but where they can reap benefits from exposure to your attendees.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So the on the event side of it, it's really working with the vendor, working with the outside resources like Kennedy Events, and then working with the partners to make sure that everyone is getting what they need and essentially expect from the partnership. And within that, the sponsorship of the event. And really just making sure that the kind of the three legs of the stool, that the vendor, the partners, and the end users get the best experience from the events that they're sponsoring and that they're hosting.
You know, when we have an early conversation with a client who is creating a new event from scratch, and I'll give like a hypothetical software, SaaS company that is looking to produce a conference for their users and their prospects. They have a number of other SaaS or, tech partners in their space. And they envision a world where those partners have a place in the event. Sometimes I see two directions this conversation goes. Well, we're going to bring in a lot of revenue from them, but we don't know how. Or, gosh, the first year, we don't really see ourselves going after revenue from them. We're going to work with them on other things, like them trying to bring some attendees to us or bring some staff resources for this, for the stage that we are in all of this, or some content that would demonstrate that we are a resource for our clients. What are the pitfalls in there? Like for the direction they can go with the first ever event?
So I don't think there are any pitfalls in the direction that a company wants to go, but what they have to do before they finalize that direction is do the pre-planning. So what is the purpose of the event? Is it to get partners more engaged? Is it to reach out to a larger audience beyond the customers and the prospects? Is it to actually bring more partners into the partner program? And then once you have that, the basic reason why you want to get sponsorships, then think about, now, are you doing the sponsorships to cover the cost of the event? Are you doing the sponsorships to cover part of the cost? Are you doing the sponsorship just to get partners involved in the sponsorship so you can get butts and seats and you have more speakers now because partners are sponsoring that? So you really have to start from the beginning, just as you would with any event that you're going to do. You don't just say, oh, I'm going to do a user conference. We're going to do it in Miami on March 17th. And, that's it. There's a lot of planning that goes ahead of time. And along those lines, I think that's the biggest pitfall that I see with companies, as they don't plan and they don't have those discussions beyond, let's say, the partnership team. You have to, when you're working with sponsorships and the partners, you have to make sure you are talking to the events team on a regular basis, whether that be the internal team or the external team or a combination of the both. So making sure that you have those guidelines set up and everyone is on the same path. You also just need to make sure that this is something that you want to do, because once you tell partners that you're going to have a sponsorship, you can't pull back. Or you can pull back. It just doesn't look good and it's a lot more difficult.
You mean you shouldn't say, oh yeah, this is going to cost you $15,000. And when nobody bites, say, just kidding, you can have it for free.
Yeah, it's a little difficult kind of chewing that pill once that goes, once you say that, or the very opposite, like, oh, we've had 5 people who are interested in the platinum sponsorship at $15,000. Now we're going to raise it to 25 and see if we have people. You just don't want to do that. And then one of the other pitfalls that I've seen a lot is the thinking that you can just have someone manage the sponsorships as like a part-time job in addition to, sales development or marketing. You can have someone do it part-time, but what you need to do is make sure that that person is in all the meetings. They're in the planning meetings. They're in the meetings where you're talking about, the layout for or the floor plan, because that's going to directly impact the sponsors. And making sure that they're in the meetings about which breakout sessions, what's the main stage session, because again, a lot of that usually falls into a sponsorship prospectus, and you have to be representing the sponsors at that point as well as representing the company. So it's a weird, you're stuck in the middle to a degree. I shouldn't say stuck, you're in the middle, and you just have to make sure that you have that. So 2 pitfalls: not having someone who is focused on it and can be a part of the meetings, and then just not doing the pre-planning.
Within that early goal setting discussion, what do you run into clients who say, oh yeah, among all of the things that you described, I want all of them. And yes, I want it to drive revenue. Yes, I want it to drive attendance. Yes, I want it to build out new partnerships and prove value to existing partners. And how do you help them hone or narrow down to the most essential and achievable of their dreams?
Unfortunately, I do have clients that are like, we want all of that.
All of that.
What I usually go back to is, let's look at your MBOs or the KPIs for your team for the year. Is it to drive more partnerships? Well, if so, and you're only at 5 and you have to be at 10, well, then let's make the focus of the sponsorship prospectus. Let's make that the focus of getting new partners involved. And just really, you have to have those hard conversations about, if you can only have 2 of these things on the list, what are those 2 going to do? Which is the one that's going to drive the most revenue, if revenue is your top goal?
Mm-hmm. I think that's really smart. Also reminding them to tie it back to overall business goals or department goals for the year or for the quarter.
Yeah.
And then one of the things you said really struck me, that you are ultimately an advocate balancing the needs of the partners and what's going to resonate for them. So one of the reasons you described why you need a seat at the table is to say, that's going to be a rich opportunity for them, or no, they're going to feel like they're shunted off into a corner if you do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, And I think that's just partner marketing in general, not specific to sponsorships, is that you have to represent the vendor that you're working with or you work for, as well as the partners, and make sure that all the needs are met as much as possible. You're never going to have all those needs met. But I've been in conversations before where they're like, nope, we're not going to do this anymore, or we're going to change the direction that we're going with this event. And I've had to raise my hand and say, that's what we have told the sponsors we're doing. And the sponsors are also asking if we can do this, this, and this, or, one of these three things. And then I've had companies say, oh, that's actually a good idea. Let's add that into the thing. I'm not by any means saying that our sponsors get the opportunity to change the prospectus, not at all. But if they have little things that are going to help, absolutely, bring them to the table and suggest them. And if they get accepted, great. And if not, that's okay too. But having that communication with them where they're comfortable saying, this really isn't working, or this doesn't make sense to me in the prospectus. Why are we only getting, the list of the company names ahead of time rather than the full list? Being able to go back to them and say, oh, well, it's because we don't want you spamming all the people who are attending the conference, or, well, you'll get the full list of all the registered attendees at the end of the conference, or just really having that communication open with the partners. But you're right. You're 100% as a partner marketing person, you are in the middle of the vendor and the partners, and you need to figure out a way to support all of them.
And probably at the same time, because I've certainly seen this happen, like prevent them from being their own worst enemies. Like, if I gave you that list, you're going to spam it. And before everybody comes, they're going to hate you. Like,
absolutely.
You don't want that. We don't want that. It's not a good look. Yeah,
exactly. And, if they've got that full list ahead of time, there's really no oomph for them to literally work their table or work their booth, because that's where you're going to have the good conversations. So yeah, but partners always want the lead list ahead of time. And, it's not going to happen these days.
Right. On the event production side of things, we are very protective of stage time, and and we try on behalf of our clients, and I know you do as well, to be really thoughtful about the resources where the brand opportunity is going.
Yes.
Because if I owe a partner brand exposure on signage, I sure would like that to be signage we need anyway, and not, or signage that is relatively easy to produce for that scale of conference, not something I have to pay a union engineer to hang from the ceiling. And it's the only thing that has to have a lift brought in.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the fun part of creating a prospectus, is the different opportunities that are available. And, you can have high-end expensive things like that, like hanging it where you have to get union guys in the lift and all. And I should say, you should also have lower costing ones that are super simple to produce. Like, for a couple $100, you can get cocktail napkins made with your logo and the sponsor's logo. So lower cost options as well as the high end options. I think that's super, super important that quite a few companies forget about, that they just want the $250,000 sponsorships. Well, what about, you're cutting out a huge list of people who could potentially be sponsoring your event.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And when it comes to stage time, I don't know if you've had this discussion, but we sometimes find ourselves, first it's educating the client, the host of the event, and then the partner. You think you want 5 minutes to introduce XYZ, or you want 30 minutes on the main stage. Believe me, you don't, because no one wants to listen to a sales pitch. And
exactly,
we have all become I was going to say sophisticated consumers, but that shows up as it shows up as like reticence and snark and tuning out. And
absolutely.
Yeah. So I would say you can, the right partner, and I would love to hear if you think there's like a magic number, a sweet spot, the right partner can have a ton of bang for their buck with a 1 minute introduction of your amazing keynote, where they've refined and honed their message. Their brand is there. They've tied themselves to the reason why this is a meaningful conversation. And that's it. And they're out. And come meet me over here or come hear me this afternoon.
Oh, and I was just going to add that, and not just meet me, but listen to two of our customers that we have on a panel and how they're using our solution integrated with the vendor who's putting this event on. Yeah. And I think, in everything that we're doing these days, like exactly what you said, people are sick of the sales pitch. No one wants to hear that. People want to hear, how is it going to impact me? How am I going to make money on it? How difficult is it going to be for me? Or how easy is it going to be for me? Show me real world examples. So yeah, let's get the vendors off, or let's get the sponsors off the main stage when it is a sales pitch. Get them on the main stage for a customer panel or a conversation that you're not selling your product, because we can all do the research online. We can, go onto the vendor's website, go to G2, do all these searches and find out and talk to people. We don't need someone up there telling us how wonderful they are.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Let me pull up for a second or pull back for a second and say, how in the world did you get started in this? And what was the path to your early days to now? Like,
so, how I said before, don't hire or don't have someone just kind of do it as like a halftime. Yeah, that's exactly how I got started. It was just, you're doing partner marketing, Maeve, or you're doing, general marketing. Why we're having this event? Why don't you go ahead and just get sponsors for us? It's super easy, no big deal. Well, 25 years later, I've honed that craft a little bit more. And yeah, just working with partners too, and having the relationships with partners has really just enabled me to do a natural flow that we're helping them now with their demand gen and their brand presence and their ability to sponsor at it. So yeah, I started off the exact way I told you not to start off.
I love it. Outside of events and the things I like associate with them, the email marketing around it, the web marketing around it, even the post event, fully edited video with, lower thirds and bookends and all of the little add-on places where sponsors can get value from like the long tail of that event. What other partnership strategies exist with a tech company's relationships throughout the rest of like the year, throughout the rest of the marketing cycle?
I would say the strategy that I think is the most underused strategy is the communication with the partners. So even outside of the event space, communicating with partners with newsletters, making sure that you're having webinars where they can learn stuff. There's so many different opportunities. There's usually a thinking that, or I have seen a thinking that partners are kind of their own thing. They do their own thing on their own business. They don't need our help and all. But partners are really like customers who are selling your product. So any way that you treat a customer, you should be treating, and to a degree, doing the very same things with the partners. So, communication is a huge, huge thing for me. So making sure you're having now you've got me all, my head's all spinning. Now, making sure that you're having those partner meetings and keeping that communication open to see what they need, what programs you have that you can help them with. And then going back to the event side of it, that communication with the partners before the event starts. Here's the prospectus. We're going to jump on a 30-minute webinar. I'm going to walk you through everything. Let me answer any questions that you have about the prospectus and make sure that you understand what is being offered to you. During the process, how are you doing? Do you have everything that you need in order to be successful? Are you waiting from any feedback from the vendor? And then, at the show, actually walking around and talking to the sponsors. How is it going? Are you happy with the location that you have? Do you need, another power cord? Is the bathroom right across the hall driving you nuts? If so, we can try to move you. Just little things that I think a lot of vendors, they get the check for the sponsorship and then they're like, hey, we're done. Our job is completely done. Let's just go ahead and do the event now. But it's not like that. You have to make sure that the partners are feeling appreciated, that they're getting money for their time. And in so doing so, when I call up Joe Schmo from Partner ABC 2 weeks after the event, if I've met him at the event and we've had multiple conversations over the last 3 or 4 months, when I call him up again, he's going to be like, hey, Maeve, how are you doing? That was a great show. Send me the contract for next year, or let's work on this project. And again, that's where having someone who is vested in the sponsorship and the events and the partners running all of that really, really makes sense, because it's not a one-off relationship or communication, because it's not a relationship. You want to build that relationship with them.
Instead of transactional, it's an ongoing relationship.
Absolutely.
Well, and so we met producing OpStars for Lean Data.
Yes.
Who prides themselves on having the biggest event that's adjacent to Dreamforce. And I don't know about you, but I have so many clients who say like, our 10-year dream for this plan is Dreamforce. Like, we're going to be as big as that. And I'm like, oh, maybe aim for being like OpStars, the biggest event that's adjacent to it. Which is hugely successful. And you shared that you were super proud of the communication strategy for that. And I recall one of the reasons we fell in love with you and your services was because it was so evident that you were just a cut above any other sponsor or partner engagement we'd ever seen. And so you touched on some of this, but like break it down a little bit. What were some of those communications pieces from the moment you've got that check, since that's the part that everyone kind of takes for granted, through making sure they are really in love with and happy with the event afterwards? What did those communications components include?
Multiple things. The phone check-in or the email check-in. I see you've done these 15 things. You have these 5 left to do to complete all the things that we need from the sponsorship. Are you having a problem? Can we help you out with that? Is someone not getting back to you on our side? And that's what's holding you up. Reminding them of dates. And a lot of times people will have a sponsor, a speaker portal, a sponsorship portal that people can go into, which are great because that really will help people stay on track of deadlines and what's due. But there's still that personal touch that you have to have with people. And again, when you have that, when you're at the event, the introduction and the collaboration is going to be so much easier. So I 100% love the conversations beforehand. We've had sponsors say, hey, I know we're doing a napkin for the cocktail sponsorship. Could we do a cup instead because the napkins don't show our logo properly, or whatever it is? Working with them that way. And then, as I had mentioned, actually being on site and walking around and talking to the sponsors, seeing if everything is okay. Do you need a cup of water? You're the only person at your booth right now. And I've noticed for the last 3 hours, you're the only person at the booth. Can I go ahead and get you a glass of water? Or, can I charge your phone? Do you need a power cord? Whatever it is. Because if partners don't have a full good experience, they're going to remember that. And you want them to have that good experience with the vendor itself, as well as the event, so that they come back. And then, as I had mentioned too, having the conversations after, sending a survey out, finding out what worked, what didn't work. And then not just sending that, but actually getting those results and sharing them with the executive team at the vendor company who put the event on, so that they know that this is what the sponsors thought of it. These are things we should consider changing for next year, because it's one thing doing the survey, completely different when you share those survey results And then once you share those results, follow up on the action items from them to make sure that something is happening. And then I would even go so far as to then send a note to the sponsors. Hey, thank you all for your feedback. These are the 5 things that came up as worrisome things. We are working on a plan to make them better for next year. These are the things that we worked that you said worked really, really well. We're super excited about them. We're going to continue to make improvements to them. Although they're good, we're going to try to make improvements to them. And then, sometimes you'll have sponsors raise their hand and say, hey, I would love to have a conversation with you about other things that I think you can do. And then that just brings the ownership partly to the partner too. They don't own the conference, but it gives them a little bit more of, when they're at the next event, that they can say, hey, that was my idea to have the coffee bar in there. So yeah, it's a neat experience for them to be able to participate more than yes, no, I'll give it a 10, I give it an 8 or whatever.
Right. Well, first off, as you articulate that, I'm like, well, you can see why it's a dedicated position. It needs to be freed up from other event logistics, from the event team, or day-to-day marketing or client success. If it's on like the sales or the marketing team in-house to the client, it's all of that engagement and feedback is a big job. It's a big job.
It really, really is. And then, I've worked at clients before where then it was my job to help the sponsor partner to make sure that their abstracts are in. And sometimes the partner wants me to fine tune the abstract. And so there's just a lot of different aspects to it. But again, it's like you said, it could be a full-time job because you're working heavily with the partners. You're working heavily with the event management team and the event team to make sure everything is flowing, because the worst thing that you want to have happen is everyone shows up the day of the conference and something is completely different than what was told or scheduled and promised. And then you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then it's like backtracking, and it's not fun. It's happened and it's not fun.
Not fun. You touched on something about when somebody gives you feedback, and when someone gives you feedback, it reminds me of like a sales technique I've heard, which is like salespeople freak out when someone's pushing back on price. But a sales expert said, when someone's pushing back on price, they want to hire you. They already want to say yes. They just haven't seen the full value, instead of like, thank you very much, I'll let you know, which is like, goodbye. And so when somebody's giving you feedback, they're saying like, here's an opportunity to hook me. Like I'm engaged. I'm not just like, that sucked, I'm walking away. I'm not even taking the time to give you feedback.
Exactly.
And ideas, that's an even bigger, they're demonstrating their own engagement. And I really hadn't thought about that before.
Yeah, absolutely. And, let's be honest, not all feedback is good feedback. And some of the times you're going to get feedback from someone who is always giving feedback. And you're like, yes, I know the conference should be free for everyone. Yes, I know we should do it in Vail next year. Like, they're going to come up with these things, but it's, people want, no matter what you're doing in life, people want to be heard. They want to be valued, and they want to know that you're listening to what they're saying. You're not just nodding your head and like, oh, okay. So giving that feedback and the conversation. And if you are a partner manager, or in partner marketing, either one, and you're managing partners and you hear that partner X, Y, and Z thinks it's a good idea to do a cocktail hour the night before, and the company can't do it, that's a perfect opportunity for you to say, well, we can't do it as a company. However, would you be interested in doing your own? And maybe the company can give you $5,000 to help you with it. So you do your event the night before. Or, we can't do a full email campaign with you around this event. But what about in 3 months, we put it on the calendar and we plan a different campaign that's maybe a wrap up of the event? Or, there's just so many different opportunities with the ideas that can come in. But again, not every idea is a great idea, but there's definitely good opportunities there if you just listen to what is being said.
Do you have a favorite favorite opportunity you were able to build for a partner? Something either like fun, sexy, or just like super a perfect fit for them.
We did for one of my vendors, it was a large user conference, and the partner wanted to be engaged a little bit more beyond the booth, and they wanted some sort of visibility. And so they came to us with a couple of ideas. And what we ended up doing was a coffee cart over because it was a huge conference space that we had. One part was for eating and for sponsorships, and the other part was for all the sessions. But we ended up doing a coffee cart outside of one of the sessions. Oh my God, they had a line out the door. It was insane. But I know that they appreciated the ability to voice an idea and then us come back and say, oh, actually, that is a good idea. Let's look at the cost. And then we can, figure out what days it's going to be, what hours it's going to be, and how it's all going to happen. Yeah.
Love that. What in this like back to live moment are your clients asking for more of or less of?
It's not even back to live. It's just always more leads. We want more engagement. The partners want more leads from events, and the vendors want more partners driving leads to the event. Or I shouldn't say leads because they're not necessarily leads, prospects.
What are real, like, if you were doing like a reality check or a level set for a partner or a sponsor at an event, what is there a range or a magic number of a ratio of a really good engagement? Like 10,000 people are going to be at this event. In the best of worlds, how many of them are you going to get to talk to?
So I don't think there's a magic number for that. What I would encourage the partner is we really don't care about the scans, like the number of scans, because we all know people who, hit booth to booth to booth to get the free t-shirt and all of that.
Yeah.
Post event, what is the result of it? How many meetings are happening from it? But as the vendor, keep in mind, it's not just the amount of meetings you're having, it's the amount of meetings that your partners are having that are going to drive the customer to your solution too. And that's harder sometimes to because sometimes the customer will go to a partner booth because they're interested in the partner booth's information. They go with the partner, they implement the partner, and then 6 months later, they're like, oh yeah, I remember I was at that event and you guys were there. I liked the joint solution, so let's do the integrated solution now.
Right. Harder to measure. Also harder when you're already a user to measure like the lifetime value of that engagement.
Absolutely.
In either upselling or retaining or deepening my reliance on your tool.
Exactly.
It strikes me too that some of these partnerships are in the software, the tech space, there also exist to allow the client, the main host of the event, to be seen as a resource. So you go make a purchase that does not redound to me monetarily, like, but the knock-on effect is the host of this event is a major resource for me when it comes to solving problems around these particular tech solutions, these particular needs.
Absolutely. And that's why a lot of times the partners the vendor, the person put in the event on, will have partners there so that the customer can come in and say, I need help with my sales commissions, managing the sales commissions. They come to an event and all of a sudden there are 6 different vendors in the sponsorship hall that have that solution. So, and then the main vendor, their partner manager, hopefully is able to do an introduction and say, you might want to talk to this person because they're good at X, Y, and Z. But if ABC is more important, talk to these people and they can manage that relationship, or at least the introduction of the relationship. So yeah, that's super, super important, is the partner being the vendor. I know we're using all these different terms,
like
but the vendor,
the event host, the
the
event
event
producer
host, yes,
in this case. Yeah.
absolutely. And that actually brings up another point. Like when you're doing the pre-planning for your event, and I think this is the very first thing we mentioned, when you're doing the pre-planning, that's something that the internal team needs to figure out. Are you just going to have signed partners be sponsors and allow them sponsorships? Or are you going to allow people who aren't even sponsors, but they play in that same ecosystem and the same space, and it can help develop the end users? I've done both. They both work well. You just have to know what your preference is when it comes to who you want sponsoring.
I think sometimes that also depends on like the relative maturity of the client or their product, right? If they're super new to this space, they're interested in casting a wide net.
Yes.
And then that in turn leads to partnerships down the road.
Absolutely.
What do you do? Where do you go to stay on top of trends and best practices and keep yourself fresh in all of this?
I do a lot on LinkedIn. I don't post a lot on LinkedIn, but I do a lot of reading. And when people are posting podcasts and like this one, when people are posting stuff, I do a lot of reading that way. I also, there's a whole bunch of groups that I have an email subscription from. And I'm probably the worst end user that these companies have, because they send the email out and I put them in a box or like my little folder.
Uh-huh.
And then like 3 months later, I'll sit down and spend all day reading all of them.
Do you have a favorite? I like that practice. I think that's sanity, because we get so much information flung at us. But
yes.
Do you have a favorite or favorites among those podcasts or newsletters?
I'm going to say no, only because there are some of them are really good and some of them are bad. And it's based on the individual thing, that an individual podcast or white paper or ebook. But there's a lot out there. So at least in the partner space, there's a ton of information out there. Just type in partner marketing or partners, and there's just tons and tons of information. And it's nice because I feel like in the past, probably 10 years or so, partner programs are becoming more and more important, and they're getting more of the visibility that I think that they need. For the most part, they're way understaffed, but I think that they're finally getting that visibility. So there are a lot more resources out there now than there were 5-10 years ago, which is awesome.
Yeah. You hit on the one thing. I think both the client, the event host, and their staff or their third party event producer can fail to appreciate or take care of for a partner are their individual needs and that relationship during the event. How are you doing? What do you need? What else can I get for you?
Yeah.
Not sort of, I've definitely seen producers who are like trying to walk by their sponsors without seeing them, like, la, 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 I'm on my way to the session room. Can't stop and look at you. Please don't need me right now. What are some other things you wish that like my people on my teams, event planners and project managers and producers, better understood about partnerships and your work?
I would say it's not just about the money. It's not about the partners, like I said before, writing a check or the sponsors writing a check. It is building that relationship with them. And for people like me who have a consultancy agency and people like you, if you have a great event and you're building those relationships, who knows that, the partner, the third booth down, might have an event next year and they just lost their event person, or they want to enhance their event team and they might call you up for an opportunity to work with them. But I would say just partners are real people. They're just like you and me, and they want a good experience at these events, and they want to be heard. And it's super fun. Like some people cringe at the idea of partners, but it's, I've been doing it for like 25 years or something like that. And I love it. It's fun. And you get to work with so many different companies and so many different personalities, which is sometimes a good thing and sometimes a bad thing. But just remember that the partners are there and they want a great event, just like as an event producer, you guys want a great event too.
It sounds like, one, if they cringe, then they should hire you. And two, what I heard in there was like really value that it is a relationship. It is not transactional, and there's a lot of opportunity there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So my second to last question for you would be, since you were an accidental partner marketing expert, you fell into it and stayed with it. What did you actually want to be when you grew up, when you were little?
Oh gosh, when I was little, I wanted to be an astronaut or a doctor, which is ironic because I am terrified of heights, absolutely terrified of heights. Going over bridges, I'm like white knuckled.
Wow.
And then I wanted to be a doctor. But when I donate blood, I can't even look at the needle going into my arm. So,
so you set a different path.
So I went from that path, got a double major in secondary education in English, taught for a couple of years, and then came back to Silicon Valley and fell into the tech world. And that actually, the secondary education, the high school degree, as well as English, have actually come very much in handy working in tech marketing. So
I believe it.
It all worked out.
Breaking it down into things people can actually understand and articulate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We've been talking to Maeve Naughton, president and owner of MKN Consulting Group. Maeve, where can everybody find you?
You can find me at www.mknconsultinggroup.com, or I am on LinkedIn under Maeve Naughton.
That's awesome. Delightful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Paige.
Thanks for listening to the Kennedy Events Podcast. Come back next time and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.